Let me show you how I made this ceramic bowl right here in my pottery studio in Oxford. Start off by laying down a little piece of clay, and from this I'll then attach the bat. So using a wooden dowel, I'll press it down onto the wheel before scoring in some grooves with this wooden tool. With a slightly damp bat, I'll place that over to the ceramic clay and just tap center it so that the bat spins pretty centrally. Once I'm happy with that, I'll press down onto the wheel, ensuring that there's good contact across all of the board. Next, I'll weigh out some clay. For this piece, I'm using around 1 kilo of stoneware clay, and I'll throw it onto, again, the wet bat. So I'll place it on the board, and then I'll just wet it slightly and allow my hands to run over it. And this just pulls it all together into one ball shape. Once I'm happy with that, I'll then use my index finger and seal it down onto the bat. And here's a close-up of me coning and centering the clay. So I'll clasp both hands together and then using the bottom of my palm slowly pinch together the cone like so, and that will cause it to rise up high. There's no need to actually raise it this high, but for the video I wanted to see how high I could cone it without it wobbling or falling over, and I managed to get it pretty consistent. So next you then press it back down by leaning the cone slightly forwards, bracing it in your hand and pushing it down onto the rest of the clay. This will then make sure that it sits nice and centrally. I've been using this technique where I use the bottom of my palm like so, and I'll use that to flatten out the top of the surface, and this will allow me to open it up later. So what I'm doing is I'm bracing my left hand and my right hand together, making sure that the gap and the space that the clay has to run through is consistent throughout, and this really helps me with centering it. Using my thumb, I'll then open up the clay and slowly begin to widen that gap and then press down the base so that the base is nice and firm. Once I'm happy with that, I'll then just kind of do some final touches to make sure that the edge of the wall is still running smooth and consistently. Often I'll taper it in slightly, and this will help with the pinching that's to come. So now in this section I'm pinching the ceramic vessel and locking my hands together with my right hand further out and my left hand slightly higher up. I'll begin to pinch the wall. Here I'm pinching and pulling the vessel out, and this allows it to open up and create that bowl form. I'll continue to do this until I've got the right shape. Now I'm using a wooden kidney to remove some of the slip and just get that final form before running a wire underneath the wooden bat, and this will allow me to pull it off later. So I'm just using a sponge here to remove any excess slip from inside of the vessel, and also just tidying up the lip a little bit. So once I've prized it off the wheel, I'll then put it away for storage and come back to it later. So a day or so has passed and the bowl is just under leather hard at this point. I found an initial pass at this stage just allows me to ensure that the inside of the bowl is nice and smooth. So just like the outside previously, I'll get a wooden kidney and just burnish the inside shape. If you do this too soon in the process, it will cause the bowl to deform, so I like to leave it a day or so to dry out. I'll flip it over at this stage, ensuring that the bottom will dry, and then just running some water around the lip because the lip tends to dry out relatively quickly. I use this little Tupperware box in the back, and that allows me to dry it out really slowly over a few days. So a couple of days later, it's leather hard and ready to be trimmed. So I'm just using a metal tool here and ensuring that the bowl is a consistent shape all over. I did find that the lip was slightly warped and this caused it to wobble, but I did manage to correct for it when I was trimming the base. So I'll flip it over now and then just using this sponge here, again tidying up the lip because it's slightly damaged from touching the wheel. In hindsight, I think this was still a little bit too soft for trimming, so in my next video I think I'll leave it another day just to dry out a bit more. Next I am going to work on adding the little chopstick holders, so I'll lay the chopsticks down on the lip like so, and then just using a little metal pin I'll set out the areas to mark to reduce now. Using a trimming tool, I'll just cut away a slight indent onto both sides, making sure there's a nice space for the chopsticks to rest comfortably, and then I'll move on to touching up and the finishing bits. So when I've done that, I'll just use a sponge and come in, and this will allow me to smooth out the cut marks and make it appear a bit more consistent. And here's the final piece. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe.